Hi everyone, and welcome back to Retro Legends. At the start of the 1990s, the video game industry entered a period of deep transition. Gamers began to look beyond 16 bits, drawn in by promises of 3D graphics, optical media, and unprecedented power. In that context, two systems emerged that tried to get ahead of the future, but ended up representing one of the most controversial chapters in console history: 3DO and Atari Jaguar. Both were born with enormous ambitions. Both promised a new technological era. Both failed. Not because of a single mistake, but due to a combination of business decisions, structural limitations, and a market that wasn't ready to follow them. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for more journeys into the world of retro gaming. Let's get started. Between 1992 and 1994, the console market experienced a phase of apparent stability, beneath which, however, a latent technological tension was building up. Super Nintendo and Mega Drive continued to dominate thanks to a now mature catalog, supported by expert development teams and a loyal audience. 2D had reached such a level of sophistication that the immediate benefits of a new generation were marginal for the average consumer. Leading companies approached this phase with extreme caution. The next step was not conceived as a simple increase in power, but as a structural transformation that would require new tools, new development languages, and a rethinking of the entire production chain. For this reason, the main players chose to postpone their entry into the new generation, focusing on consolidating existing platforms and observing emerging technologies. In this context, 3DO and Atari Jaguar entered as premature proposals. They didn't just offer an incremental evolution, but tried to introduce technological models and, well, market approaches not yet assimilated by the industry. The adoption of optical media, the emphasis on 3D and future-oriented communication clashed with an ecosystem still organized around traditional development cycles and relatively low production costs. The problem was not the technological advance itself, but the absence of an industrial structure capable of absorbing its consequences. There was a lack of standardized development tools, consolidated pipelines, and a network of studios capable of sustaining the required complexity. At the same time, distribution and marketing were not ready to manage products positioned outside established price ranges and expectations. In essence, 3DO and Jaguar introduced a change that the market hadn't yet asked for. Without real demand and without an infrastructure ready to support it, innovation turned into isolation. This imbalance between technological ambition and industrial capacity represented one of the key factors that compromised its sustainability from the earliest stages. The 3DO business model radically diverged from what had been adopted until then in the console industry. Instead of directly controlling hardware production, the company chose to position itself as the holder of a technological standard, licensing the platform to third-party manufacturers. The goal was to replicate an approach similar to that of audio-visual formats, where competition among manufacturers was supposed to generate economies of scale and lower prices for the end consumer. However, this theoretical framework clashed with the industrial reality of the sector. Authorized manufacturers had no incentive to reduce margins, as there was no central entity willing to offset losses through software royalties. Unlike traditional competitors, 3DO did not adopt a strategy of selling hardware at a loss, transferring all production and licensing costs to the final price. The consequence was a fragmentation of the hardware offering without the expected benefits. The different versions of the console showed minimal variations, but did not generate significant price competition. On the contrary, the high cost became a distinctive feature of the platform, limiting its accessibility and drastically reducing the installed base from the very beginning. In terms of software development, the open model produced ambiguous effects. The absence of direct control over the ecosystem favored a rapid influx of titles but weakened quality selection mechanisms. Without a large installed base and without centralized financial support, many studios operated with reduced margins, prioritizing rapid, low-risk productions. In this context, the promise of widespread adoption and cost reduction did not materialize. The 3DO model, designed to overcome the limitations of traditional consoles, ended up amplifying them. The absence of an actor willing to bear the initial investment transformed a potential industrial innovation into a factor of competitive isolation, compromising the platform's sustainability from its initial stages. So, from a tech point of view, the 3DO was made to be a platform all about bringing different kinds of media together. It wasn't really built for just video games. By using CD-ROMs, it got around the problems that cartridges had, which meant it could handle more data, better sound, and lots of digital video. This choice showed they believed video games were just one part of a bigger world of interactive entertainment. The hardware was really good at handling constant audio and video streams, focusing on cool visuals and an interface made for complicated stuff. But this didn't automatically make it better for gaming. The computer power it had was more for multimedia, which meant it wasn't as good at handling tricky 3D scenes and more complex game rules. The way they sold it made things even worse. Unlike its main rivals, 3DO didn't sell its hardware at a loss, which could have helped more people buy it quickly. The companies that made 3DO added all their costs for making, licensing, and selling it to the final price, and they added a lot extra to make sure they didn't lose money. This made it a very expensive item in the market. The price when it first came out was higher than any console before it, making 3DO seem like a luxury item that was hard to justify compared to other options. This high price really slowed down how many people bought it at first, which made developers less interested, and that started a bad cycle where the high cost and not enough good games just made each other worse. When we look at 3DO, we can see it had a clear but uneven direction. The console was mostly used to show off amazing sights and sounds. It used a lot of full-motion video, pre-made scenes, and really good digital audio. These things made it look really high-tech, just like the multimedia platform it was supposed to be. But this way of doing things caused some big problems. The parts of the console used for video and audio took up a lot of power, leaving less for making games run smoothly in real time. The 3D graphics often looked shaky, with choppy movement, simple shapes, and not much ability to move things around in space. A lot of times, the 3D seemed more like a cool extra than a main part of how the game was played. This difference between what was expected and what actually happened showed up in the games that were made. Many games focused on making a big first impression, using exciting scenes and parts where you just watch things happen. You didn't get to interact much, often just making simple choices or playing short parts that broke up the normal game flow. So, the games often felt like the video parts were more important than actually playing them. The experiences it offered were a mix, kind of like a video game and an interactive movie put together. Even though this fit with 3DO's multimedia idea, it made the system less appealing to gamers who liked more active and well-made games. The games available for the 3DO really showed how its business model worked. It was pretty easy to make games for it, and CD-ROMs were cheap. This made it much simpler for game makers of all sizes to get started. This meant a lot of games came out fast, but there wasn't a good system to make sure they were all good quality. Because there wasn't strong control from the top, the market quickly filled up with games made on a small budget and in a hurry. Many games focused on fancy things like video clips or cool-looking introductions, but they didn't have strong gameplay. All these average games made it hard to see the really good ones, so people had trouble finding games that were actually fun. Also, the 3DO didn't have enough special games that only it could play, which made it hard for the console to stand out. There wasn't a plan to create and keep popular game series that could help the console stay strong over time. Without famous characters or ongoing game series, the 3DO couldn't give players something to rally around and build a community. This mix of many games and a weak identity made people think less of the whole system. The game library looked big, but it didn't have a clear direction, so it couldn't show what it was really about. In a market where lots of game systems were fighting for attention, not having a special set of games really hurt the 3DO's chances of getting and keeping players interested. Atari launched the Jaguar project within a severely compromised corporate landscape. After losing its central role in the 1980s and a series of commercial failures, the company found itself operating with limited resources, a reduced organizational structure, and significantly weakened credibility among developers and distributors. The brand retained historical value but no longer possessed the strength needed to sustain large-scale competition. In this scenario, the Jaguar was conceived as an attempt at a quick relaunch, rather than the result of a long-term strategy. The choice to promote the console as 64-bit met an immediate communication need, to create a simple and easily understandable distinguishing feature for the public. The term became the cornerstone of the marketing campaign, suggesting a clear generational leap compared to the competition. From a technical standpoint, however, this definition proved ambiguous. The Jaguar's architecture combined 32-bit and 64-bit components, without the entire system truly operating on a unified 64-bit pipeline. The label was therefore used as an indicator of perceived power, rather than an accurate description of its hardware capabilities. This discrepancy between communication and technical reality generated expectations that were difficult to meet. When the concrete results did not reflect the implicit promises of the slogan, public perception of the platform quickly suffered. In the absence of a solid technical foundation and a coherent support strategy, the Jaguar failed to transform a high-impact message into a lasting competitive advantage. The way the Atari Jaguar was built was meant to make it super fast by doing many things at once. It had many special computer chips, and each one did a different job, like handling pictures, doing math, or making sounds. In theory, splitting up the work like this should have made it use its power well and be stronger than other game systems. But in reality, not having a clear path for all these parts to work together made doing many things at once a problem. Getting all the different chips to work together needed very careful programming, like telling each one exactly what to do and when. Even small mistakes in sharing the work quickly caused slowdowns, making the idea of it being super powerful not true. The tools for making games were not good enough for how complicated this was. Atari gave out unfinished kits, with new and buggy programs and code libraries that couldn't easily talk to the hardware. The instructions were all over the place and often old, so game makers had to guess and try things out to figure out how the system worked. Because of this, making games run well was hard and risky. Only game companies with really smart people and enough money could use some of the console's power. Most teams, though, chose easier ways, not using the harder parts of the system, and their games didn't turn out as good as they hoped. This led to a mix of games, where the Jaguar's amazing abilities were rarely shown off in a good way. When it came to graphics, the Atari Jaguar showed what it could do in different ways, which really came from how it was built. The system was really good at handling fancy sprites and detailed 2D worlds. In these areas, some games looked really good, with smooth movements and lots of things on the screen. But when it came to 3D graphics, there were some big problems. It didn't have a special part just for 3D, so other parts had to do most of the work, which made things slow and uneven. The shapes often looked rough, with not many textures and a messy way of showing depth. The game often didn't run smoothly, making it hard to feel like things were moving well or precisely. These problems were really clear when games from other systems were brought to the Jaguar. Games made for simpler systems were put on the Jaguar without being properly changed for it, and often there wasn't enough time to do it right. It was really hard to program for, which meant a lot of things had to be cut, making the Jaguar versions look worse than the same games on other consoles. Not having the right tools or enough people who knew how to work with it made these differences even bigger. A lot of times, game makers decided to make the graphics simpler or change how the games worked just to make them run at all. This meant that the games didn't always look the same, and the console's amazing power was rarely used in a way that made it stand out. The Atari Jaguar failed to build a recognizable gaming identity, partly due to the absence of a clear vision for the type of experiences the platform should represent. Unlike its competitors, no dominant genre or creative direction emerged that could serve as a reference for developers and the public. The console remained without a distinctive trait immediately associable with its catalog. The software library developed slowly and remained numerically limited. Many titles appeared as isolated projects, lacking continuity or a broader context. The truly memorable productions were few and failed to create a driving effect. The absence of recurring series prevented user loyalty, making each release an event disconnected from previous ones. On the third-party front, Atari failed to establish structured and continuous support. There was a lack of competitive economic incentives, adequate technical assistance, and a credible long-term roadmap. This discouraged many studios from investing significant resources in the platform, further limiting the variety and quality of productions. Exclusives, while representing an attempt at differentiation, were not enough to fill these gaps. The lack of titles capable of defining the console's image made it difficult to justify its purchase. In the absence of a coherent and recognizable gaming proposition, the Jaguar struggled to establish itself in a market increasingly oriented towards platforms capable of offering continuity, security, and a clear identity. Both 3DO and Jaguar had trouble talking to people. 3DO acted like it was only for special, tech-savvy people, which made it seem far away from most people. Jaguar, on the other hand, was too pushy and confusing in its ads, often talking about tech stuff that didn't make sense to everyone. Neither of them managed to get people to trust them. The sales numbers showed it clearly. 3DO sold about 2 million units around the world. Jaguar sold even fewer. Both consoles didn't last very long, making them cost a lot, and since not many were sold, they stopped getting support very quickly. Behind the scenes, both companies made quick decisions without thinking them through. 3DO didn't keep a good handle on its own system, letting too many not-so-good games flood the market. Atari, on the other hand, didn't realize how hard it would be to make games and thought its brand name was stronger than it was. In just a few years, both consoles were gone from stores. Over time, people looked back at 3DO and Jaguar as big examples of how things can go wrong. They weren't bad ideas, but they came out at the wrong time and had business plans that couldn't last. Today, they remind us that just having cool technology isn't enough. 3DO and Atari Jaguar didn't lose because they were worse than others. They lost because they tried to change the game's rules without really knowing how to play it. Their failure showed that new ideas need a strong plan to work. And that's why, even now, people still talk about them. Not as winners, but as lessons. And with that, our trip down memory lane comes to an end. How many of these fun facts did you already know? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell for more trips into the world of retro gaming. Thanks for watching Retro Legends, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay retro, stay legends.